Welcome to Crossing Faiths. I'm John Pinna, and today we have a returning guest, Dr. Minhas Kahn from the Peshawar University in Pakistan. And so thank you for coming back on Crossing Faith.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me again.
So we have this, I saw this post that you made, and it piqued my interest because you were talking about interfaith in relations between the Muslim world. Maybe you could walk us through this post that you made and the motivations for making the post.
Well, John, interesting question, and I can talk about it for long, but just to cut it short, I think it was the Iran war, Iran on one side and US Israel on the other side, that I started, reading about different theories. Because whenever it comes to war or power politics, we say that it is either a realist approach or a constructivist school of thought is behind so and so issue or conflict, or is it a liberalist approach? So, though Samuel P. Huntington's Clash of Civilization, I had read some 20 years back when I was doing my PhD, but it just clicked to me that we were, are we getting closer to that clash of civilization idea that Huntington had presented,
Right.
or is it something else? So then looking at this war and the different countries' posture and their stance about both sides, I thought that it is something more than that, because each civilization, I think, civilizations cannot be categorized as a religion, and that we can say that a religion is a civilization. Or if, because he's talking about several civilizations, 6 or 7 civilization, and that he's saying that would become a threat for the West. So if West is on the one side and the rest of the civilization, and within that Islam on the other side, so whether it is a West clash between Islam and the West, then I thought, Islam is a religion, so he must be talking about Muslim world, but within Muslim world, there are so many civilizations that Muslims come from, or I mean, they were Muslims and belonged to different civilizations. They converted to Islam from another religion belonging to a different civilization.
Sure.
So it is an amalgamation of, different civilization that we say that Muslim community or Muslim world is doing this or that.
Right.
Same goes for the West, because there are many countries in the West where we see Muslim majority countries. So that does not mean that it is just the West, it is all the West that he would have talked about. It is only the Christian West that he's talking about. So that led me to think about the clash of religions.
Right.
And this thing is going on, we can talk about it. Let's say from Cold War, it was going on when it was used by United States and Saudi Arabia, including Pakistan and UAE, that, we have to fight this infidel Soviet Union. 9/11 was one event.
Yeah, defining moment.
Yes, defining moment that defined Muslims as, someone who were intolerant, who were becoming a threat for the West, because the 9/11 attack was carried out by an organization which leader was a Muslim.
Right. Well,
So
it's interesting. 9/11 is like right now we're hearing rhetoric, right? That's with where the biggest are the highest state sponsor of global terrorism is Iran, for example, right? And that's something that's been repeatedly said, right? And so but no Iranians were participating in 9/11. So that's
Yeah.
that's a good example of how there's sort of this conflation of this Muslim world is somehow there's just like these levers, right? And that one person's pulling these levers and all Muslims are moving in one direction or moving in another direction based on what happens. And so now we're
Yes.
defining or it's someone is defining this global actor as the largest global actor in terrorism is Iran. And it's a strange movement when you think of. I just had this conversation. Maybe it was earlier this week, and someone goes, "Well, they are the biggest state sponsor of terrorism," and I go, "Explain to me that." Somebody's been in the counterterrorism game for a long time. I was like, "Explain to me that," and they go, "Well, the first thing they said, well, 9/11." I go, "Well, there wasn't any Iranians involved in 9/11. There was Yemenis and there was Lebanese and there was Saudis." And I go, and if you want to really split hairs, none of them were Shia. If you really want to get into that, but the thing is that, and none of them were Iranian. And I go, the problem is that I don't think everybody's really asking the question, and this speaks to your point that you made in the post. And I wanted, because you're an academic, I was trying to think of the thesis question. And so the thesis question of, is the Muslim world a definition, something that's defined by that the West uses to define itself rather than us, because we are an interfaith, multicultural, interethnic, multilingual community that's the byproduct of what you say, of these empires and cultures and communities all over the world. There's no leader of the Muslim world, doesn't exist. Uh, and so is it something that the West uses to define itself and its purpose?
Uh, John, like I said, or my argument is that what look like as a civilization war is actually a structural one.
Right,
And the fractures inside Muslim world, for example, let's take Gaza, Tehran, Riyadh, are not the product of ancient theological hatred, bubbling up naturally.
right,
They are the residue of the deliberate foreign engineering,
right,
uh, dividing them and then funding them, and then after a conflict become or grows so much that it is difficult to control it,
right,
then stepping back. So honestly, I would say that it is not only that but when it comes to within Islam, and we see the fractures or the disagreements that is dividing the Muslim world as well. The idea was, I think, imported. It was transmitted to the Muslim world, but within Muslim world, if we see this division, uh, let's say, for example, of different sects, the Muslim themselves have also a biggest role in creating that schism.
right,
It is not, you know, um, exported by the West or any other country or civilization. We are as much possible for this division as could be the outsiders.
right, right.
So, Muslims' failure of solidarity and I think statecraft manship from within has also helped this division.
Yeah. I mean, the Muslim world has political movements. Muslims are part of politics. and that exists within. Then there's motivations within there are political motivations
Yeah,
for this sort of,
exactly.
yeah, anti-colonial movements, like like the Wahhabism, for example. To me, in the the birth of Salafism, and then we move into the Muslim Brotherhood, those sort of things are all political movements, Muslims that are political and have a political ideology, and so I think that distinction is important, just like the Supreme Council. We talk about Iran. Iran is, I was talking about whether it's a theocracy or just a totalitarian regime. It's a totalitarian regime, and I'm not sure it is a theocracy. And we were just debating that I was debating that with a friend, and I go, there's a lot of political motivations behind the revolution in '79. There was a tremendous amount of political motivations behind it. It wasn't just religious, in the sense that they were all Muslims there. So you had Muslims that were on both sides supporting the Shah, and supporting the Western regime, with of the Shah. But then also you have this idea of this Muslim community within Iran that was had a lot of bruising from the Mossadegh, when the CIA and the West got rid of Mossadegh. And so the problem is in '54. So the challenge is that you have two Muslim communities, the same, that are Iranian in Iran, who have different political views, and one decides, well, we're going to try to overthrow the Shah, and they won. And so that's we're dealing with the the repercussions and of that revolution still, because that community isn't foreign born, isn't interventionist. That's Iranian. And I was trying to explain that to somebody. I go, there's not. It's an Iranian movement that happened in '79, and that
Mhm.
Iranian movement is still in charge now. That's fractured, right? So where you have the Supreme Council, and then you have the citizenship, and then you have the administration of the government, and there's different levels of extremism of political views and religious views conflated in Iran, just like there is in America when it comes to the Christian community. Right? So, I think that the reductive nature of the Muslim world makes us, it allows for uh, a political agenda in the West to move forward with momentum, because then you don't have to really engage or understand or try to do the math on what the Muslim community is doing in a specific area or specific region. And I don't know, is that a fair assessment?
Well, I would say I would agree with you partially. Uh, because you see, again, it is about politics.
Right,
And in politics, what do we do? I mean, first it's our own interest, then it is it is our own interest, that is it is then the foreign interest that is serving our interest,
right,
and for which we create something, um, you know, to, how do I put it? Um, to tell our public that, this is a threat and this thing is going to benefit us.
right,
Like just now we were talking about evangelicals and Salafi Islam and Wahhabism and all that. So it is how you are selling the idea. It
right,
is how you are framing the idea
right,
that makes a lot of impact on what you are trying to achieve. Because I think, I mean, I'm not thinking about clash of civilization. I'm not um, you know, someone who would believe easily on conspiracy theories. I just say that, if we are talking about Muslim world and how it has been described by the West, I think it is a misreading of the Muslim world, despite accepting the weaknesses in within the Muslim world. So I think it depends on how you see the situation and from which position you are, deciding or reaching a conclusion. Because when it comes to, again, I would go back to the clash of civilization when I was talking that why Huntington still matters, even when he's wrong, is because he gave Western policymakers uh, sort of a grammar for misreading the Muslims.
Yeah.
And why I say is that because it has this grammar has never been fully understood or learned.
Yeah.
The clash framework is intellectually discredited by many, like institutionally, but institutionally entrenched and discredited by, uh, scholars like, mm, I'm forgetting his name. I just mentioned it.
Okay, yeah, no, no, but well, an honest debate about the clash of civilizations and the idea of this high. I remember reading it in grad school. I was getting my master's, and I remember reading it and going, "What is like? What is this real?" And so, and I couldn't figure out. I said, I go, I said, it's really great from an American perspective, right? So as an American, I, want to be motivated to be involved in the national security space. And I was like, okay, this is great because now we can engage because it gives me the talking points. It allows me to make sure that I know that we're a bastion of the West, and the West means something, right, as defined by Huntington, and then we all these other things are on the other side of the West. And so, I deal with the Amman message, right? So that's my thing, is the Amman message. What do I love about the Amman message and the Amman conference? All the scholars discussed apostasy. They discussed mainstream. What is mainstream Islam? That doesn't mean that other sects aren't in Muslim, but that just means they're not mainstream. They're not the part of the general population. For Sunni, for Shia, right? They talked about terrorism, and anybody who violates these maxims are on the other side of Islam, right? They might claim to be
Yeah.
Muslim, but they're not. I love that. I love that. Why do I love that? Because first and foremost, I don't have to go back to the scholars. The Ummah met, they talked about it, and they all sent out uniform fatwas. And so I can go to Usmani's guys or Sistani's guys or Ben Baya's guys, and I can still execute and operate my NGO, right? Because I have that theological and secular authority within the construct of the Amman message, right? So I love that. And clash of cultures, this idea of it does that from a geopolitical standpoint, and but something unique is happening. It takes religion out of the West, and it defines it as the West, and this sort of ambiguous identity. And we know all the problems that are happening with West, right? The clash of civilizations between Europe and America, and all these different cultures. But then it also, on the other side, sort of reduces and defines the Muslim world as a theological entity, and that theological that all these motivations are theological. It's like when we were talking, I was saying, we've spoken a number of times. I don't know what kind of Muslim you are. I don't know if you're Sunni. I don't know if you're Shia. I don't think about that. Do you get up in the morning and say, I'm going to put the Islamic flag in front of my house or something? Or, I wonder what the West is doing these days. We don't operate that way as Muslims, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that there's an interesting sort of component here of like the West is this sort of ambiguous, androgynous entity, and then you have this really rigid definition of the Muslim world, right? It's whatever is happening that may whatever is happening in the Muslim world is theologically motivated, and then from there it defines the entire entity, the entire civilization, right? And the entire population, I guess I should say. And I'm thinking right now of something like the Gwardar port in Pakistan. The port that's over in one of the easternmost or westernmost ports in Pakistan. Uh, as an American, I don't like that the Chinese fleet and the Russian fleet berths their ships there. I don't like that. But I understand that and Pakistan being an ally, I understand that there's other motivations, right, from the Pakistan government to have that port there and service those vessels. Uh,
Yeah.
is there a Muslim motivation for the Gwadar port? No. It,
Yeah.
no, there's not.
No.
But from an American standpoint, I could say, they're our allies. This is all geopolitical. They shouldn't be servicing those vessels. We're trying to wage a war in the Gulf, and that provides a stepping off point for our enemies, right, as Americans. So, and then I turn around and go, it would be very easy to describe Guardaport in theological terms as Islamic with an Islamic motivation in America, in the West, which would be ridiculous outside the West. Does that
Yes.
make any
Yes.
sense? I don't know if was that because but this is what's going on in my head right now while we're talking.
You see, Amman message, as you talked about it, uh, was it about religion and explaining what is, allowed in a religion and what is not? What a religion supports and what does not it support?
Right.
It was not.
Yeah.
It was to, uh, you know, engage all the participants in a conversation where they were trying to explain a religion or their religious views. And now, again, it would depend whether it was from Quran or from Hadiths,
Right.
right? So basically, it was not a religious sort of gathering.
Right.
It brought religion inside. We cannot separate religion, like you said, that, religion is going out, and many would say that in the West, particularly, this secularist idea or modernization has pushed back religion. It has not.
Right.
It would continue to mix with our cultures, the way we live, the way we, do politics. It is going to stay and interfere in politics and vice versa as well. Now, you see, when we say that Muslim is a theological entity,
Mm.
that can be again debated. Aman message, like I said, that it was sort of, it became a theological entity for Muslims.
Right.
But how it was received by the rest of the world
Right.
is again making it questionable.
Right.
So the thing is, it is not, one versus the other. It is always when it comes to religion and we talk about religion clashes and religion and politics, interaction, and when this you know conf- uh, conflict or this terror side of this interaction is visible, then we start thinking about you know um, the reasons that it is either foreign engineered fragmentation that is created within a religion. And I think it is not a conspiracy theory, because in history, if we go back to history, I can quote various examples. So it has a paper trail.
Right.
uh, Now, you know uh, within the Muslim world, if we are talking about, because in the West, if there are certain issues within Christianity, they try to deal with them locally.
Right.
But this fraction between or within Muslim community is debated everywhere, because from 9/11 it has been considered as other,
Yeah.
and that other, if was united, could have become more threat for the West.
Right.
So fragmentation was also engineered not by the foreigners but by the Muslims as well.
Yeah, the motivation of different movements within the Muslim world to vie for power has capitalized on that. You're right. I mean, the idea that they can motivate groups to use the West as a tool to elevate their movements,
Yeah,
or their power.
because if we see, Gulf countries, particularly Saudi Arabia, UAE, I mean, they spent billions of dollars, and particularly from 70s and onward,
Yeah.
exporting, a specific type of or specific version of Islam,
Right.
that is Wahhabism, into countries like Pakistan, Indonesia, Egypt, and across Africa.
Yeah.
And this replaced completely the rooted and diverse Islamic traditions with a uniform and intolerant version of Islam,
Right.
often
Yeah,
intolerant version of Islam.
with a command and control, with
Yeah,
direct lineage to overseers that are housed in Saudi Arabia, for example. And so, which is a consolidated amount of it's like a command and control system. You can, and
I
that
mean, this did not happen organically. It was funded. I mean, systematically through mosques, madrasas, scholarships as well. So the money, everything. When I say that, I do not. These are not conspiracy theory. Everything is documented.
yeah,
Cold War clash between United States and Soviet Union. Everything is documented. How much funding was given to countries like Pakistan and a few other, to ally them against Soviet Union. Um, then Western funding during the Cold War, creation of the Mujahideen,
right. And yeah,
in
Charles, yeah,
90s, yeah, to
yeah,
fight the Soviets. I mean, it was a deliberate attempt to empower the radical factions, because they were the best warriors, they
yeah,
were the best fighters, and that was serving the interest of those involved.
right. Well, what do we to get back to and anchor this a little bit with the idea, we have a current event right now. We have the Iran war, and and we have the Straits of Hormuz are open, maybe, or closed, maybe. I'm not sure where they are today. But there's blockades going on. The Iranian, the Gulf states and the Iranian regime right now are all in this locked struggle from a Western perspective, or at least stateside. There's an interesting interpretation that and an elevation of the Iranian culture, the Iranian people, as there's something that has to happen to them to bring them into the fold, right? Of Western interaction that's acceptable, right? The rhetoric of the Secretary Hegseth and the president, largest state sponsor of terrorism, for example, and then, we are going to, annihilate the people until they submit. The Gulf states are being attacked, and are as part of this regional conflict, and in large part, there's not a lot of rhetoric. There's not a lot of conversation within the Muslim world as a response. The Gulf states are more or less like, this is not great, but we're going to go with the flow and see what happens.
Yeah.
When I talk to some of my evangelical friends and Christian friends and multi-faith friends within the multi-faith space, their response is, let's see what happens too. So there seems to be this sort of general malaise of, well, let's see what happens with Iran and see if eventually we can get them to play ball with us on our own terms. What do you think? Where do you think this conflict? What do you think is a roadmap between the Sunni and Shia communities, between the Gulf states? Not even looking at the religion as a part of it, because there's motivation factors. But what do you see as a roadmap for the region to start moving in a direction of trying to resolve this conflict? That would be is there something that the West isn't looking at that you think would be appropriate to start looking at and address? And your post on LinkedIn sort of it intimated as that there's a different way to look at this.
Well, I think I talked about looking at it differently was basically that we need to mirror inward.
Right.
We need to look at our own weaknesses, our own failures, where this division has been created, or where this fracture has appeared. Because I think post 9/11 decision to treat Shia Sunni dynamic as a security variable rather than, sorry,
No.
a theological reality was, in fact, I'll go back to Cold War. Cold War, basically, when these Taliban and these factions were left by United States, they brought a version of Islam that believed, or that was, I don't know what to exactly use the word for them. They interpreted Quran in a way that was basically very conservative, that saw Sunnis as outside of the boundaries of Islam. And that, again, I think was something that hurt the Muslim world from within. Now, Shia Sunni divide, I think, was, like I said, that if the Muslim community had remained united as a civilization, that would have harmed the Western interest, because after 9/11, when President Trump, started saying that it is a crusade against those who were involved, meaning that it is a crusade against Islam, has, sent a very wrong message to the Muslim world.
When Bush made
So
that,
we had to- yeah.
yeah,
So Iran war, I think, is in a way reflecting this division between Shia and Muslims, but it has a history.
right,
Because if we look at the Middle East, uh, uh, there are three aspects to this division. Number one, threat perception. First is self-interest, then it is threat perception, and third is funding and using other resources to fight that threat.
right,
So if we look at Iraq 2003, what United States did was that after defeating Saddam or killing him, they brought a Shia group in the government because they were marginalized during President Saddam time. And the Muslims on the opposite side, resisted that. And that led to the creation of ISIS.
yeah,
So that friction or that conflict or that division was sponsored by both from within and from outside.
right,
Then 2011, if you look at 2011 Bahrain, again, Bahrain has a majority of population is Shia. It is ruled by a Sunni. And Arab Spring, in a way, gave way to a thinking that, we need democracy, and those Shia population rose against the ruler. That ruler was supported by Saudi Arabia. United States, that was supporting Arab Spring in Tunisia and then Egypt, they did not support that Shia community, as they say that, we have a major role or more moral role to protect the world from ills. They did not support those Shias inside Bahrain.
yeah,
Saudi Arabia supported the minority that was in government. Then comes Syria. Who was fighting there when Assad was in government? Houthis were supported by whom, and the regime or the kingdom government was supported by whom? Iran and Saudi Arabia. And Iran and Russia were on one side, Saudi Arabia, United States, and their allies were on the other side. So, it has damaged the unity of a community, that has resulted in conflicts and wars. Present day Yemen, if we look at that, Sunni Houthis and then Sunnis versus Houthis. Again, Saudi Arabia and US are supporting one group, and Iran is supporting the other. United States is providing arms to the group. So basically, if you look at Iran war, it has a history. Shia have been brought in, or Sunnis, I would say, are brought in conflict with Iran, where major rivals that we see in the Middle East are Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia, again, I would say, is a country that is oil rich, though
Right.
at present we see that Prince Salman's vision of 2030 has, in a way, to some extent, drained its economy, and it is, also it is in favor of de-escalation in this present war. It is supported by, it has a military pact with Pakistan. So that would have made things different and difficult for Pakistan had Pakistan sided with Saudi Arabia when Iran targeted US bases inside Saudi Arabia or in other Gulf countries. But what Pakistan at that time was doing was a shuttle diplomacy or backdoor diplomacy, which I think went in favor of Pakistan. It did not side with Saudi Arabia. It did not side with Iran. And Iran, as far as you talked about elevation of its culture, I would say that a majority always try to increase its number to a majority.
Right.
So that would not be wrong,
Right.
because it is supporting groups that are Shia.
Right.
And they, in return, are supporting now Iran in this war.
Yeah.
That is, again, something that, is one of the reasons that is dividing the Muslim world. Within Sunni, if we see, there's this clash between the Deobandis and Barelvis and this school of thought and that school of thought. But that are local frictions or divisions.
Sure. Sure.
Globally, it is Shia Muslim against Sunni Muslim and vice versa. Gulf states, again, I would say Qatar, because it is next door neighbor to Iran, is trying for, peaceful dialogue and all that. UAE, if you see, it had a history of uh, territory with Saudi Arabia.
Right.
In 74, Saudi Arabia had, mineral-rich, oil-rich area annexed to Saudi Arabia, and return was given some area so that it could attach it to, or Qatar could be its neighbor.
Sure.
Then, because of that territorial, dispute, both UAE and KSA had certain differences, but still, because of 70s oil crisis, the OPEC was established, and that in a way brought different Muslim countries in its fold. What happens now is that it has left, as of today, OPEC and OPEC plus.
Yeah.
Now, it needs United States as a country that could provide it security. It has recognized Israel. It wants Israel to provide it security, not only against, let's say, for Iran, for example, Iran, but also from Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So, each state is looking at its own interest, and then, they are aligning themselves with like-minded people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And roadmap, well, it is very difficult, I think. One thing that I always say is that no state, United States as a major world power, sole superpower of this world cannot win this war. And Iran also has not the capacity to keep this war going on, because it has been blocked. Its naval
The Straits of Hormuz are closed.
yeah, Strait Hormuz, Chabahar, and I mean all those naval area of it has been blocked, have been blocked by United States.
Yeah,
So it cannot export oil. That is going to add to the deterioration of its economy.
yeah,
It does not have the storage capacity of the oil that it is producing.
right,
It there is this internal friction as well.
right,
Some would want to get engaged and go on with this diplomacy that Pakistan is mediating or facilitating.
yeah,
There are certain, particularly IGRC, they do not want now, and today you might have heard the Khamenei's message
right,
that we would not abandon our nuclear aspiration.
right, yeah,
So right now, I don't think there is any roadmap, but at the end, it is either like Robert Papp, he has this favorite and he's on LinkedIn as well. You must talk to him someday. He has this escalation trap theory, and I'm contesting that as, asymmetric exhaustion, as to who gets exhausted first
right,
would be the loser.
yeah,
So I don't, I think the only thing that can help both countries face saving would be to, come to negotiation table and talk to each other, not on, just United States terms and conditions, but United States should also listen to their demands and see it where they work for them and for both sides.
well, Pakistan is a unique position in the fact that they're facilitating the conversation. They're uniquely positioned to understand Sunni and Shia communities and understand the geopolitical scenario. We've seen a number of, at least two talks thus far. Where do you see, as is Pakistan the most suited to facilitate and broker that, or is there another actor? I know Putin has offered, and there's a number of other entities that have offered a seat at the table. So what do you think is who's best suited to facilitate the conversation?
Well, about Pakistan, I would say that Pakistan and Iran also had this Shia Sunni problem.
Right,
There were certain groups that were active in Balochistan were said to be supported by Iranians. There are certain Sunni groups which Pakistan was blamed, accused that it is supporting them. So we had issue whenever there is a major incident, a terror incident against Shia, whether in Pada Chinar, in Balochistan, in Gilgit, in Dera Ismail Khan, then that creates a problem when it comes to relations between both Iran and Pakistan.
right,
So this Shia Sunni issue was an issue between both the countries, and Iran was more inclined towards India than Pakistan. Now, why Pakistan has or is in a position to facilitate or mediate these talks is number one. You see, As soon as United States and Israel started this war, all the world, had concerns, and they outrightly said that it should not have happened.
Sure.
United Nations said that, we want peace, we don't want wars, and particularly this war between US and Israel on one side and Iran on the other side.
Sure.
European nations, they were, divided initially. Many were, blaming United States for an illogical war, for its aggression. Many were silent, but now we see that, all of them, majority of them are against this war and, are accusing United States. But nobody offered to negotiate or facilitate any kind of talks between them. So that left Pakistan only.
Right.
Russia could not be, a facilitator. China could not be a facilitator because of this power struggle between the three states: United States, Russia, and China.
Okay.
Pakistan was a Muslim country, number one. It was a nuclear state. It was at the time trusted by Iran because a day before the war, India Prime Minister had visited Iran. So Pakistan could be trusted better than India. Oman, on the other hand, which was, engaged in the 2015 talks,
Yeah.
was not in a position because of its, Iran strikes on these Gulf countries on US basis. So Pakistan was the only option. And before the war, somehow Pakistan and United States had developed an understanding because on the Gaza issue,
Sure.
President Trump had started appreciating our leadership. So Pakistan was acceptable for United States as well.
Right.
That made it very ideal country to facilitate facilitate a dialogue between both the countries. First talks, I mean, as it is reported in media, were successful, but then, at the end, it is said that certain calls were received by Vice President Pence, so he had to leave the meeting and then he left Pakistan. Iranian side said that they had already reached an agreement, but they had to go back. US envoys had to go back because they were receiving calls from both Washingtons as well as Israel. Iranians 10 US 10 points initially were not acceptable to Iran. Iranian points were not acceptable to Pakistan. Now, its major leadership was killed.
Right.
Yet they were resisting.
Yeah.
And I think that resistance, that continued resistance, forced in a way or compelled US leadership or policymakers that they need to engage in dialogue. And that was why Pakistan was a country that could facilitate the talks between both. Pakistan, again, I say because of its Pakistan's leadership and particularly Field Marshal Munir close interaction with and rapport with President Trump has, some positive impact on the dialogue, on the talks, because at least when both the leadership of both the countries were going back, no one said that, the talks have stopped.
Sure.
They said they were not fruitful or we have not reached any agreement, but they would continue to talk. Second round of talks did not happen because this time Iran was more demanding. It openly was saying that it would not accept any term or agreement on the dictation given by United States.
Yeah.
And US envoys were also asked not to leave for Pakistan. Iran went to Oman, then came back to Pakistan, and then Russia. And then 5 points that now have been sent through Pakistan. We do not know whether they would be accepted by President Trump or not. But I think both countries are exhausted.
Yeah.
United States, because its political leadership has its moral authority has declined. The public is against this war. They do not support this war, and that is very important for them because of the midterm elections in November.
Yep.
Their treasury is often almost depleted. The amount that they have spent on this war is much, much greater than what Iran has spent.
Right.
Iran now is, I think, exhausted because of the blockade, because of the sanctions, because of,
And they,
internal
they can't hold
rift
off.
between different.
They can't hold off indefinitely, right?
Yeah,
Well, I mean that, yeah. So yeah. I mean it's, and in America we're are feeling this. The public is feeling the strain, and the political vignettes that are hitting the president and hitting the party are substantial, coming towards November. Yeah, yeah. I mean, so what do you think? You think is, if you were going to come up with 5 points, where everybody loses, but the war ends and everybody wins. You know what I mean?
yeah.
What would they be?
5 points that Iran has sent to America. I mean, they want to open Strait of Hormuz. They want US for war reparation or toll on all the naval vessels that pass through Hormuz. They want guarantees that United States would never again
Attack.
make
Yeah.
attack Iran through United Nations organization and international community through a resolution, but they do not want to talk about the nuclear
Your stuff. Yeah.
or the uranium enrichment.
Yeah.
They want to postpone it for the time, and I think that would not be acceptable to United States,
Yeah.
because earlier I think Iran was just was enriching its uranium. Now they would want something for their future security because after talks with US officials, US has always, between the talks, attacked Iran. Last year it happened in June,
Right.
and this year in February.
Right.
So now I think they would want some solid guarantee to end this war and future guarantee against any future attacks by United States from United Nations and international community.
Yeah. It's difficult because now hostilities have are amorph the hostilities are amorphous, but it's rough. It's there's been a steady stream of conflict that's been happening even during the talks. There's and of course there's other things happening in the Middle East, in the region, with Lebanon and Yemen and others, and so forth. And so the challenge is that we're even if they cease hostilities, the path forward is difficult because Iran morally wants a guarantee of their future. I think a lot of people, like I said, we talked earlier in the conversation about the clash of cultures, right? And so there seems to be a willingness. When in the start of this war, I reached out to my multi-faith crowd, and they said, "Well, let's see what happens." And I go, that means that attacks will happen, and that means that people will die. Very simply, I said, and I go that's what that means. I go, so as we're escalating this conflict, and it seems very interesting that we would jump to war or conflict without engaging diplomatically. And I think that my going back to one of my first comments when we started the conversation, it was interesting because I said we ran this whole dialogue of why this is happening, and my response was one word. It said prophets. I go, there's very the Iranians, like any country, wants to have a stake in the global economy. They want to sell their petrol. They want to sell their pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
They want to sell, which are their strong industries, and and they want to have a stake in the global economy. The other Gulf states want it too, and as long as sanctions are happening, with Iran, then that means that they have a higher pole position. They're farther down the road for participation in the global economy. And I think the fact that I think Iran would abandon their nuclear program if America said we're lifting sanctions, American companies are buying your petrol, we welcome your pharmaceutical industry to work with the global community, and then whatever other industries are out there, we're happy to discuss or facilitate. I think the challenge on the Iranian side is that on one hand they want to do everything on their own, but they need foreign influence and they need foreign investment, and that means foreign interventionism, which is something that is very difficult for them to accept. And then we have a diaspora here, in America, of the Iranian community, and as you know, diaspora, their minds are frozen in time. So all of those diaspora that are here for the Iranian they have this idea um, of Iran from pre 1979, even though they have communication, right? So, like a good example is, like I said, my great grandfather comes from Nuristan province, right? He left when it was actually called Kemdesh, right? And so, when I learned, I learned when he was teaching me what's Nuristani or Indo-Greek, I learned this really old language. When I go to the Kunar Valley or something that I'm speaking, they're like, "Boy, you must be from the middle of nowhere." Because my terms are really weird. They're old because the language is frozen in time. And so, from 1896, that's the guy when he left, right? When Amir Rahman invaded, that's when he left. So as a boy. So the point is that, I think there's a diaspora here that's been trying to define what Iran could become, but in a context that's from 1960s. Right? And so that's what's also going around in the Beltway, in Washington, is that Iran just. I mean, how weird is it, or strange is it that they want to restore a monarchy in 2026? It's confusing, right?
Mhm.
Very confusing. So, but that's something that has gained ground in America because the population the majority Iranian population comes from this diaspora that's frozen in time, and so you have these unrealistic sort of goals, an unrealistic identity that's being imposed on what could happen, and the results of that are very, very potent. The idea that all we have to do is attack Iran, and there'll be this internal uprising, and there's this groundswell of people that will want the Shah back, And that's very real here in America, and that was a very real agenda. I've dealt with the Pahlavi people in the Beltway throughout my entire career, and they've always said all they need is a little push. But I think the Iranian people in, and I don't like to speak for other people, but in Iran, just want a stake in the global economy. There's plenty of people that are young enough and smart enough to come up with political movements and motivations and everything else to run their government without bringing back the Pahlavi cult, right? So, which is here. It's a cult. So there's a strange sort of there's a narrative from the population that's here. There's this clash of cultures narrative as well. But then if you strip all that away, which is the beginnings of our conversation, and you say, here's a people, forget about them being Muslim, here's a people that just want a stake in the global economy, and how do we facilitate that? Is there, no one's really just asking this sort of straight line basic question. Just like with Pakistan, right? Pakistan has its geopolitical issues, right? We've got Afghanistan to the north. You got India
Yeah.
to the south. You have the northern territories, which is essentially run by a viceroy in Islamabad, right? Because that's occupied territory. And I don't. And then you got the Balochistan. So you got and what does Pakistan really just want to do? It wants to do the best thing for its people, the best thing for its national security. They aren't always in agreement because of what becomes a priority. And then there's all these internal sort of factions. But at least you have the ability to manage and 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 move in your own at your own pace relatively independently. Um, and so I know there's all these caveats with that statement, but Iran just wants a stake in the global economy. Why are we just ignoring that just single narrative, or that general narrative that everybody wants security, food, the Maslow's pyramid, everybody just wants that. And America could facilitate that right now by ending the war and say, here's the way in which we build an economic plan that is acceptable for both parties. What do you think the is that, I mean, what do you think the major obstacles in that is or are?
The major obstacle, I think, is economy.
Yeah.
It is not about security. I mean, security comes when you need to ensure your security, and for that you, uh, you know, mm, start uh, um, or improvise a defense policy, which in a way you a statement believe that it can serve as a deterrence for the country that can become a threat. You see, there is no threat to United States security.
Right.
I mean, yesterday a Jewish man was killed in UK, London, by some Muslim. These type of incidents happened everywhere. Muslims are getting killed in London by, say, Christian people. Christian people are killing their own Christian fellow countrymen. Uh, the issue comes when you construct a narrative. Like, for example, this Muslim man who has killed the Jewish man. Everybody see that, it is a Muslim who believes in Islam, and that is a radical religion, has killed a Jew because of Iran and Israel and United States war. That is one thing. I mean, that is the mix of religion and politics that we see everywhere. But when it comes to this war, particularly Iran, Israel, there's no security threat to United States. There was no security threat to Israel from any country because it is a nuclear power. It
Right.
has nuclear capability. Yes, of course, there were these attacks going on by non-state actors inside Israel because of its war or consistent killing of civilians in Israel and different regions in Lebanon and other countries. This war is one where we see that the main interest is economic, and economic interest is that of resources, that is oil.
Yeah.
And Iran has abundance of oil. Even when it was sanctioned by United States, it was exporting oil to China. It was exporting oil to European countries that are allies of United States,
Sure.
and it was exporting to other countries as well.
Yeah.
So it was sustaining those sanctions.
Yeah.
But Strait of Hormuz, that Iran has says that it has a sovereign claim over Strait of Hormuz, uh, and Iran's previous leadership, Ayatollah Khomeini, statements against greater Saturn, US as a greater Saturn, and Israel
Sure.
has made it a country that is a threat.
Right.
Right now, I think it is oil that is needed because all the, conflicts that I mentioned, the countries where we see conflicts are the countries where some sort of conflict was created that resulted in further destabilization, further chaos, that led to a situation where now those who had in a way exported those issues
Right.
to those countries are having their interests served.
Sure.
All oil-rich countries, natural resources-rich countries have chaos, political chaos. There is militancy. There are conflicts. There are groups warring with each other. So it is first creating destabilization and then having your own interests served in that country. So this war is something that I see as economic war,
Yeah.
that it can serve the interest of certain countries.
Yeah. I think with it there. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I can no, I agree with you. I think that we're at this point where we've got to, if America can't sustain it and Iran can sustain it, which as you said, then we have to kind of start now and formulating a diplomatic path. And that diplomatic path has to work with security and economic development as well as a lasting peace in some manner, shape, or form. I've been working on my end to present those cases, and it's really fallen on deaf ears. I mean, but when they wouldn't be there. There wasn't a motivation to do it on the front end. A lot of this was just a big surprise to all of us. And I walk in those halls, and it was a big surprise. I was like, what do you mean we're going to war? And to the point where when I was talking to the media prior to the war, they felt that it was when I said, "Oh no, we're going to war this week," then they said, "No, that's not possible. We're not going to war with Iran." I mean, and I said, "No, no. I think you should really look into this." And they said, "No, absolutely not. This is ridiculous." And it was very funny because afterwards, some of the media people that I was talking to said, "We should have. It would have been we would have been able to capture the headline if we listened to you." I go, I just don't think we should be heading to war. I think we should be having a diplomatic solution. And there's a and I think the media is the only entity that can kind of move this in that direction. Well, I think that your input is spot on. I think the challenge is that we have this sort of destabilization of these countries for economic motivations. I don't know if there's I don't know if there's a path forward that America and the Trump administration is willing to look at presently, although they are looking at options. And then, in the same respect, the Iranians have a existential threat. They like everything that they've ever said has been proven correct when it comes to the West. It's like, see, we
Yeah,
are dealing with, neo-colonial or colonial intervention. Our sovereign territory has been bombed. The Straits of Hormuz, which they see as something being inherently theirs, is being controlled.
yeah,
And so, Pakistan's trying to broker deals. They are uniquely positioned, right? From having Sunni and Shia, theological and Islamic contextual knowledge. Also, they're a nuclear power. They have relations with both countries, and yet we're sitting here and the bombs are still flying. Right? The rhetoric is still strong. We are all at day 60 here with America. So this is day 60 is the hold off point of the War Powers Act, right? So now we are in this debate of, do we make sure that we put a cap on war powers, or are Republicans going to allow for this war to continue without a declaration? And of course, there's semantics, with all that stuff. I think Korea was a police action; it wasn't a war. But there's all these semantics with terminology. But I think that your post was very valuable. I think your input is very in this conversation is thoughtful. I know when we talk about a lot of the different components of this, it's in a naive way, I'm like, well, let's just give them a stake in the global economy and let's let we don't want you making nuclear weapons, great. So why don't you guys abandon that so that we can do this, this, and this? Our administration is not willing to do that, and I think it's a very naive of me to even say it, but that's essentially what they want, and what everybody wants. But I think I appreciate your input and your thoughtful comments. It means a lot for you to take the time.
it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Always welcome.